It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cowboys. Locked On Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for tuning in. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. You can also listen to him on the Best Coast Boys podcast. Landon, what's going on, sir?
Marcus, I'm having a fun 21st century problem where somebody has posted an ad on Craigslist and they added the wrong phone number. And the phone number they decided to include was my cell phone number. So I have been fielding phone calls all day about an electrician that I don't need. So outside of that, I'm ready to talk Cowboys football and not do I need an electrician for my gas station that I own?
First world problems, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
Man. What an interesting life you have, Landon. That's all I will say.
This is unrelated to me. Someone has done this to me, Marcus. Someone has added my cell phone number into a Craigslist ad, and
that's what I said.
I'm being harassed.
You just have an interesting life. Speaking of interesting life, Landon, we're going to talk about Reggie Robinson, who has had quite the last 12 months. That's the segue. And we're also going to talk about the Cowboys rookie mini camps that happened last weekend. We got a little bit of news and some nuggets coming out of that camp. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Now, I want to start with Reggie Robinson. According to our guy, Mike Fisher at 105.3 The Fan, the Cowboys have informed Reggie Robinson that he's going back to cornerback after being moved to safety earlier this offseason, after being moved to corner. I don't know how many times he's been flipped back and forth, but it does sound like he's going back to his natural position at cornerback. What do you think of the move?
I apparently had missed the last move back from cornerback to safety, and I had thought that he had been previously at cornerback this whole time since last year. But yeah, I mean, I think it's not surprising. I mean, that's clearly where his skill set lies. I think, it's probably going to be interesting to see if they don't change back again. I mean, especially with Mukamu, being a former corner who's making the move to safety. They clearly have a couple of different guys that they like at both positions, or at least have history of playing at both positions. Yeah. So, I think what they're trying to do is just get everybody in the spot that they have the best chance to make the team. And I think there's a lot of numbers at cornerback right now, but if Robinson can step in there and show something right away, and maybe, is a little bit closer to being ready to be on an NFL playing field than, let's say, Wright or some of these down roster guys, there's every chance that he could make this team and be a contributor as like a fourth or fifth corner.
All right, so I think there's two ways to think about this. Do you think the Cowboys are moving Robinson back to corner because they believe that's his better position? Or do you think they feel good about the safeties they have on the roster and they just feel like maybe Robinson has a better chance to compete at corner rather than safety?
I can't imagine that I imagine it's more the first, in my thoughts, just because I can't imagine that they feel so satisfied at safety that they aren't willing to throw more solutions at the problem. I just tend to think that Robinson, I never understood the move in the first place necessarily. So I'm going to kind of err on the side that they just redetermined that cornerback is his best position.
Maybe they're looking at the safety position like this. Okay, we've got Donovan Wilson and Keanu Neal as our strong safeties. We can call Neal whatever we want. We've got KZ at the free safety. We've got Mukamu. And then we've got maybe J-Ron Kearse is going to be the fifth safety. We're good. Like, we don't need another project back there. Let's move Robinson to corner and let's see if he can find his position there.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly could be both.
Or what if Jordan Lewis is going to play more safety?
Yeah, and like I said, I think that's kind of the missing piece of all this that we're not fully aware of is where are all these guys who could kind of play both positions going to play? Is Jordan Lewis the plan on Jordan Lewis to move him at safety and have him compete there so that you can have a Robinson competing with, it could be that they know that they like Wright and they want Wright a chance to actually get some snaps or compete for playing time snaps. And part of that is a trade between Jordan Lewis and Reggie Robinson, right? Because Lewis technically is probably slotted above some of the rookie guys,
without a doubt.
And then if you make him over a safety, he's in competition to kind of be a starter or at least be a guy who plays heavily in the safety role. And then Robinson, you bring him into the competition, and he's probably more on a level playing field with guys like Wright and Canada, and I would say, and some of those down roster guys like Burton and Goodwin and Hall and that sort of thing.
So I before we came on the show, I tweeted out that I think the Cowboys depth chart at corner is basically set, and maybe now it's just a competition between Nahshon Wright, pick 99, and Reggie Robinson, who was pick 127 or something like that, for that last cornerback spot, and it got a lot of pushback. And I'm not quite sure why, Landon, because I think the top four are pretty much set with Diggs, Kelvin Joseph, Anthony Brown, and Jordan Lewis, unless Jordan Lewis is moving to safety, but we can talk about that later. And then after the top four, now it's Nahshon Wright, Kennedy, and Reggie Robinson competing for cornerback 5. And then I think cornerback 6 spot is locked up with CJ Goodwin, right? Because he's going to be on the roster because of the special team stuff. So do you agree that Robinson and Wright are probably competing for one spot?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's unreasonable, and I'm actually interested in what the pushback was, because I don't know that that's.
The pushback was basically that Nahshon Wright is guaranteed to make the roster, so there's just not a spot for Reggie Robinson.
I mean, he's a third round pick.
That's probably right. It's just to me, what I'm basically saying is I feel like they are competing for one spot.
Yeah,
well, Robinson's probably going to have to be a whole lot better in camp than Wright to make the roster.
Yeah, absolutely, and I don't think that's unusual or a hot take. I mean, look, Robinson was not drafted by this defensive coordinator, and they've made it pretty clear with a lot of their moves so far that if you don't fit what this defensive coordinator is doing, you don't have the advantage that the guys who do.
But here's the thing: he wasn't drafted by Dan Quinn, but Al Harris was there when they drafted him, right?
That's fair.
Will McClay was there, obviously. George Edwards was there, although George Edwards is really more of a linebacker coach now, right? I mean, there are guys that were, I would guess, that were advocating for the Reggie Robinson pick 12 months ago.
Yeah, and at the same time, they moved him to safety. They liked him so much at corner that they moved him to safety. So, and he was also a 4th round pick. I don't know. I think. Yeah,
but the thing I keep coming back to is I think Robinson was more highly regarded going into the draft than what Nahshon Wright was.
Yeah, but a lot of that has to do with what we saw on the draft show or what so-and-so draft commentator have.
I thought Robinson's tape was better, to be honest.
I mean, I think there is certainly that argument, but I also think that it's not so much better that it's giving him a sure leg up on Wright.
No, it's not. It's not.
That's the thing is that I mean, if you want to compare these guys, one of them, has been in the NFL for a year, but at a position that he isn't going to be playing this year, so he didn't get any kind of experience playing it. He played against lesser competition in college. He was, he was a step down from where Wright was. I mean, it's not that Oregon State is an elite school, but it's at least in the Pac-12, the Pac-10, and so I think that you look at that, you look at the draft position, and I think, I mean, these guys are not on. Robinson is certainly not any better footing than Wright is, and I don't know why that's necessarily breaking news to anybody, because I think that's there's, if they liked Robinson a ton, they probably wouldn't draft Wright. Let's put it that way, and so I think they are clearly trying to spam the position with what they can to see what sticks. If it's Robinson, that's great. If it's Wright, that's great too. Maybe it's both. Maybe you like both of these guys, and we talked about surprise cuts yesterday. Maybe they surprisingly cut someone like Brown, and they figure out a way to make all these guys work. But I don't think that Robinson, because we thought he was a steal last year, and people think that Wright was a reach this year, has better footing than Wright does to make the team.
That's probably the battle that I'm most interested to see in camp, because I just want to see, what does Reggie Robinson look like at corner, because we didn't get to see him at all last year at that position.
Yeah.
I love this tape coming out of Tulsa. He's a better athlete than Nahshon Wright. Wright's longer, he's bigger, and he played at better competition in college. So the good thing is, for the Cowboys fans, I do think they're just going to take the best player. I don't think they're necessarily going to be tied to draft position, because, to be honest, the draft positioning isn't all that different, right? One was a comp third and one was a 4th-round pick. It's not that big of a deal. They're both about the same age. Just take the better player and have a really, really, good cornerback 5 that you feel awesome about. Let's take a quick break, Landon, so I can tell you guys about Nugenix. Football fans, listen up. Nugenix, the #1 selling free testosterone booster at GNC, and they are offering a complimentary bottle to all football fans in America. To get your complimentary bottle of Nugenix Total T, text DRAFT to 231-231. This unique man-boosting formula is powered by Testofen, which helps boost free testosterone and total testosterone levels and increase energy and lean muscle mass. To get your complimentary bottle, all you have to do is text DRAFT to 231-231. That is DRAFT to 231-231. Message and data rates may apply. All right, Landon, let's talk about Cowboys rookie minicamp. They weren't in pads. There was no hitting. Still some takeaways, and most of the takeaways are about where players were lining up. And let's start with the linebackers, Landon. Micah Parsons started at middle linebacker and Jabril Cox at weak side linebacker. I don't think that's all that surprising. Do you think it's surprising?
No. It's what they said they were going to do. It's where they he played off-ball linebacker. They mixed him in as in some DPR. They mixed him in some pass rushing situations like they talked about on day 2. But I mean, look, this is rookie minicamp. You have to start somewhere.
Yep.
And you have to learn a position before you learn multiple positions. So Mike linebacker is definitely going to be the most complicated position he's going to learn. Because he's got to know the calls. I don't know if he's necessarily going to be the one making the calls right away, but he needs to start learning that right away. And knowing all the angles and the run fits for, that defense from that position. So yeah, Mike will, they had to start him somewhere. Might as well start him at the spot that has the most complicated job. And so that he can kind of get a hold of that first. And then it probably makes learning the will a lot easier.
And then Jabril Cox at weak side linebacker. That's not surprising at all, right?
No, that's the spot he was supposed to play, right? And I'm excited for him.
Yeah, from everything that I've heard coming out of camp, it sounds like that's probably going to be their future linebacking core. It just makes too much sense. I think they complement each other well. I think Parsons as the Mike is fantastic because you can allow him to blitz. I still have mixed feelings about him being used as this designated pass rusher. I don't know. I don't know if you're going to get the best desired values by doing that. I think he's a better blitzer than he is a rusher. And I think allowing him to do stuff on stunts and coming downhill on, green dog blitzes, I think is going to be where he's at his best. So we'll see what the Cowboys are going to do. It's rookie minicamp. It's nothing to stress about. A couple other things, Landon. Our guy, Osa Odigizua, was lining up as a 3 technique at the Cowboys camp. Not all that surprising given his size, but how do you think he factors into this defensive line room that already has Tristan Hill and Neville Gallimore?
I think he's going to give guys a run for their money. I think he's the fact that he's playing 3 technique is not surprising to me.
No.
That's what he should be playing. And I think that they needed interior pass rush. They needed to add that element to their game. And I think that there's a couple different ways to do that. Is to add someone like OC to a rotation. So that way you're not reliant on Neville Gallimore. You're not reliant on Tristan Hill. You can rotate in the hot hand if you want, or just give these guys reps. So there's waves of just fresh defensive interior pass rushers coming. I think for Gallimore and Hill, they need to kind of, open their eyes a little bit to what's happening. I think there was not just Osa that was, drafted. There's lots of defensive linemen who can kick inside, who can rush the passer from their position. So they need to kind of be aware that, like, hey, you need to do something so that they don't try to replace your spot. I mean, I think Gallimore is a little bit safer, probably because he's a younger player and he was drafted by at least this coaching staff, at least Mike McCarthy coaching staff. But I think you look at Tristan Hill. He showed us some things last year. I think he flashed at different points. I think he's also a guy who, as opposed to certainly Gallimore, I think that can play. I think Hill can play inside, at the one if you need him to, and some snaps, especially on pass rushing downs. But I think that what every defensive tackle who was on this team previously that is got any kind of pass rush prowess needs to kind of perk their ears up to is the fact that the Cowboys are clearly looking for solutions there, and kind of going back to what you were talking about with Parsons. I think that there are packages that they will deploy where you've got Parsons as their defensive pass rusher, as like stand-up defensive end. Lawrence kicked inside as kind of a 3 technique, because we've seen him do that before as well. Another true defensive tackle playing the interior pass rusher, that could be Osa, that could be Gallimore, that could be Hill, and then Randy Gregory on the other end, and just to kind of get like a speed NASCAR package out there. So anytime that they start talking about that, I mean, I think these guys need to kind of keep in mind that those are taking away snaps from you. And they're basically making it so they could cobble together the 3 technique role between a couple different players. And what that means is that I would say Tristan Hill and Gallimore need to be really wary about their roster spots, and that they are not guaranteed spots on this team necessarily if they don't, show something or at least they're not guaranteed snaps. Even if they do make the team, because the Cowboys are clearly lining themselves with other options to have on third down when they need to rush the passer.
I just want to go back to Micah really quickly, because you mentioned, the NASCAR package. I still think the Cowboys would be at their best if they have their traditional 4-man defensive line, let's say in nickel situations, and then you just find a gap for Parsons to blitz, right? I think that's where he's at his best. Or Landon 3-3-5, right? We've talked about that before. Don't just line him up on the edge and allow him blitz. Allow him to just kind of create havoc. And we've seen some unique packages from the Cowboys in the past where they had a 3-2-6, right? And Rolando McClain was sometimes the blitzer in that packages. I just think that's the better
New England
role.
Game.
Yeah. I think that's a better role for Micah than saying, okay, you're our designated pass rusher. Come line up on the tackle and go get the quarterback.
Let's take a step back on this too, because I do think that there is some confusion as to. I don't think anybody is suggesting that Micah Parsons is going to be playing stand-up defensive end for 10, 15 snaps a game.
Well, I think when people started comparing, like NFL executives compared him to Bruce Irvin, that's when my kind of antenna went up to like, hey, that's not the way that they should use him.
Yeah, and I don't know that that's necessarily their plan. Like, if that was their plan, then we just talked about it. Why wouldn't they start him at defensive end instead of Mike linebacker? So my thing is that this is a guy who I think they think can rush against tackles, can rush from the outside. So they can put him out there and you have certain packages like that. And then, when you line up a guy like that, you can also have him line up like he's a rush defensive end. And then you could run zone blitzes off of him and have him drop into a flat while you're sending somebody else up the middle. It's just, I agree that I'm not trying to put Micah Parsons like on every single nickel snap as a pass rusher. Like, I don't think that that's necessarily what they're going for. I think that they're just setting it up so they can have a whole bunch of different personnel groupings as their nickel packages. And you're right. I totally agree with what you're saying. I think they can run, 3-2-6s. They can run 3-3s. They can run, all kinds of different formations that allow, different linebackers to be on the field. Keanu Neal is a linebacker, and some of these guys like Neal and Parsons who could play, could play multiple positions or at least be deployed in different ways. It just gives you a different package to put out on the field to solve problems that you get week to week, depending on who your offensive opponent is.
All right, let's take one more quick break so I can tell you guys about Bet Online, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. We've got baseball season, we've got basketball play-in games tonight, and you can track all the action on Bet Online. Before the next pitch, head over to Bet Online on your laptop or mobile device and check out all the great sporting news, sign-up bonuses, and contest information. Don't sit on the sidelines anymore, as this is your chance to get into the game as teams prep for their runs to the playoffs. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, your online sportsbook experts. Also want to tell you guys about Built Bar. Built Bar is the absolute best tasting protein bar. It's hard to even explain it. Real chocolate with amazing flavors. And it's just a great combination of low calories, high protein, and low sugar with no crazy additives. Best of all, they taste absolutely fantastic. Go to BuiltBar.com and use promo code LOCKEDON15 and you'll get 15% off your next box. Again, BuiltBar.com. All right, Landon, I've got like 3 quick takeaways, just 30 seconds on each of these. Okay. George Edwards working exclusively with the Cowboys linebackers during rookie minicamp. It seems like that might be his new role. Do you like it?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like this should have been his role last year, and I think the Cowboys are getting a guy who's extremely experienced and has played with a lot of really good linebackers. So I like that fit, especially with how many new young linebackers we've got. It's going to be good to have him in there doing that.
I agree. I talked to somebody at the next one. Talked to somebody at the Cowboys camp, and they said Kelvin Joseph, aka Boss Man Fat, forgot the boss man part. Showed up a little out of shape.
Just that.
Just not uncommon for some of these guys. I guess it was a gut check for a couple of these guys. Getting out of the field. Nothing to be concerned about. Nothing to worry about. Correct.
No, I mean he'll be fine. I mean, the cornerbacks, especially, they're athletic. He hasn't played football in however many months, so yeah. I don't expect him to take very long to get back into shape.
We are all working on our summer bodies right now, so no fat shaming right now.
No fat shaming here. For sure.
Yeah. Actually, 2 more. Isaac, I gotta remember how to say this name. Isaac
Alcaron.
Is that how you say it?
It's Alcaron, I thought. I could be wrong. Apologies, Isaac.
I saw a good piece from John Machota saying that he has drastically changed his body. He came into minicamp, he came in onto the roster last year at like 285 pounds. He's at 325 pounds. Mike McCarthy said he's been in the facility every single day in the weight room, getting stronger. I have no idea what he's going to look like or how he's going to play. It's just somebody who is part of this international program that the NFL has, just somebody to keep an eye on. Any thoughts there?
It's always funny whenever we get international players or players that came from unusual backgrounds, right? Because we don't really hear about them in the natural course of discussion because they're not usually part of the group that's going to make the roster or at least affect the team once the season happens. But we always get questions about them from international press, right? Mm-hmm. So that's when we get the kind of update. So I'm assuming that all this information came from the Mike McCarthy press conference when I think it was a Mexican national reporter that was reporting, or Telemundo or something was reporting about him specifically. Yeah, I mean, I love it. I love these stories, right? These guys who, that's awesome. You get a crazy rare opportunity to come work out with an NFL team. And the guy, what does he do in the offseason? He puts on 40 pounds of, I'm assuming muscle. I'm assuming it's muscle because they wouldn't hopefully talk about him transforming his body in a negative way.
Glowing about him. Yeah, like he said the attitude has been fantastic. They are very excited.
So, that's fantastic to hear. I mean, like I think about F.A. Obata.
Obata.
Yeah. I mean, just, that opportunity that guy had, it's funny because he's the guy that was the scout who found him, and then London is now our defensive line coach. Yeah. And it's just, I love it. Right. Because there's so many of these guys who kind of take this opportunity for granted. I guarantee you guys like F.A. Obata, guys like Isaac Alcaron, these guys are going to work harder than anybody else because they know how rare this is. So I'll be rooting for him. I don't know how far off he is on a talent, from a talent standpoint to actually make the team. But I certainly will be rooting for him to at least, make the practice squad or something.
Yeah, I agree. I think, again, somebody interesting to watch during the, training camp, during the preseason, probably going to play maybe opposite of Josh Ball, somebody to keep an eye on. Last thing, I just want to quickly tell you where everybody was lining up during rookie minicamp. Tell me if any of these are surprising to you. We talked about Parsons at middle linebacker, Kelvin Joseph at left cornerback, Osa Odigizua was playing the 3 technique, Chauncey Golston was the left defensive end, Nashawn Wright was the right cornerback, Jabril Cox, weak side linebacker, Josh Ball, left tackle, Fahoku, obviously outside receiver, Quinton Bohanna, 1 technique defensive tackle, Izzy Mukamu, free safety, Matt Farnock, center. Anything surprising stand out to you?
No, but I think that's all very standard. That's basically what we expected. I do want to bring up Barry Church's comments on Mukamu. Did you hear about that?
Oh, I did. Yeah.
So I love hearing that. Basically, the comments were as much basically that he was the guy that Barry Church had noticed the most at practice, and just mostly the way he was moving, the way the way he could physically move at that size and turn his hips and move around, which is that's all that you're going to get out of these practices. And so to hear that about Mukamu, I have a feeling that he is definitely going to be a guy that is going to be a pet cat, just because of the position, the need there, and the potential. I mean, for a guy like this who has that kind of physical ability, that kind of size, and that kind of movement skill, if the light turns on for him at free safety, you could potentially really have something there, especially considering he was a 6th round pick. I mean, it's pretty impressive.
I'm not surprised that the 6'4", 17-pound safety stood out in t-shirt and shorts. That's not surprising to me at all. I mean,
I guess that's fair.
He is so big. He is so athletic. And if he was, assignment sound and looking smooth out there, I think there's a lot to be excited about. Patrick Watkins 2.0. Hopefully this one works out a little bit better. Man.
I shouldn't put that on him. Dare you put that on him. Wow. Listen, Patrick Watkins gave the Cowboys a lot of starter snaps. Maybe not great starter snaps, but he wasn't terrible either. And there were certainly times last year where I feel like we would have taken Patrick Watkins in a moment. So it's not the worst thing to put on him. But, Watkins also was not, an all-pro by any means either.
Shout out to Patrick Watkins. I bet you he never thought he would be mentioned on this podcast today. That is it for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, you can download and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audacity, wherever you get your podcasts. Continue to follow the show on YouTube. You can follow Landon at McCool BCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we will see